moving on, let's go over the two most basic types of variables, and there are many more types of variables, but we'll go over them in different videos. So the first type is string, normally shortened to str. And if you remember, when we were doing the print statement, we actually put quotes inside the brackets and then wrote whatever text that we wanted to. And the reason for this is to tell Python that we wanted to print a string. So a string can store any text, numbers, letters, symbols. If you need to store text, it's stored as a string. And to define a string, you can just put it in quotes. So double quotes will work, or single quotes, it doesn't matter. Both of them will define a string. So if we now created a file, so Control N, and just save this desktop, Python, I'm going to name this variables. Alright, so now that we have a file, if we did name is equal to Mihir, which is my name, so we've now created a variable called name with a value of my name, which is Mihir, and if we now were to print this, so if we were to print name, we wouldn't do it in quotes like we were doing before. So we wouldn't do this because this will just print the word name. To print this variable, we would do it without quotes and type in name. So if we type this in, we save it, and we did run, this will print my name here, and this is printing the variable name in which Mihir was saved into. So you can also do some operations with strings, just as we did with integers in the last video. So if we did variable 1 is equal to apples, and variable 2 equal to, I'm just going to write space and then oranges. If we now try to print variable 1 plus variable 2, so if we tried to, so when we were doing with integers, this would add them, but when you do it with strings, it actually just puts the strings together. So this just writes apples, oranges with a space, because in our variable with oranges, we added a space there. So you can also, instead of doing this with variables, put this directly in the print statement. So you can also write apples plus space oranges. And if you were to run this, this would print the same thing. And one last trick with strings is if you didn't want to add the space here, you can also just do the exact same thing, but with a comma. So apples and with a comma, then oranges, and this will also print it with a space in the middle. Alright, so there's also another trick that we can do. So if we took variable 2 and we use the multiplication sign, let's just do it 3 times. If we use the multiplication sign, and we try to run this, this would print out oranges, 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 and if you look closely at it, it's just variable 2 printed out 3 times. Next, let's go over integers. So to define an integer, just set a variable name to be equal to any number with no quotes. So int 1 is going to be equal to 5, and 2 is going to be equal to 10. Now that we have these variables, we can do all the operations that we covered in the last video. So we can do something like int 2 divided by int 1, just substituting 5 and 10 for the variables int 1 and int 2, and it will work. So as we see, we have an output of 2, and if we did it, 10 divided by 5 is equal to 2.